Welcome everybody. In this episode I'm going to continue talking about the tools we use in the hobby. I covered before about the Dremels and how you don't necessarily need the name brand Dremel. They're all just rotary tools, so I'm just going to show you some of the different examples of how they're used and give a little bit more of an in-depth idea of what I've already covered. We already covered the idea of this being a Dremel. This is the name brand, and this is what a lot of people use because of it being the name brand. But you do not have to use the name brand. For most of this video I'm going to use the Harbor Freight Drill Master. This is mostly what I use. I don't really use the Dremel for anything other than very specific things. So I wanted to show you what you are capable of doing, and these are running around $6, $10, just depends on what the sale is. With a Dremel there are several different kinds of attachments. You can get various different things to be able to put on your Dremel and make it into various things like a cut-off saw. There's all kinds of different bits that you can get. You can do various different types of sanding discs. There's even a table attachment to be able to mount a Dremel onto, so you can be able to get sort of like a router type of an idea. Some of the higher power Dremels, you can get a flexible shaft to be able to attach to it, and it gives you a smaller control to be able to do some of the finer work. There's various types of different attachments that you can get on a Dremel. But just because you can get it on a Dremel, that doesn't mean that you can't get it on some of the other rotary tools. No, you're not going to be able to get it necessarily for the Harbor Freight one, but there are cheaper alternatives. Other kinds of rotary tools that is just like a Dremel, like the Crafsman or some of the other different models. They have some of the different attachments you can put on their models. So don't just get stuck thinking you have to have a Dremel. You can get a cheaper one if you just can't afford a Dremel. And the different bits that I had showed, you can use those on anything. Even the Harbor Freight one will take those. Most any rotary tool has the same type of attachment that you can be able to put any of the bits into and use it. So, and just about every rotary tool is going to come with a variety of bits anyway. You're not going to be stuck with just one type. You can have the lower cost option and still be able to get just as much done. Yeah, it's a little slower and you may have to figure out a few other little options, but you can still get it all accomplished with just something from Harbor Freight. You're still going to have files, and you're still going to have sandpaper, and that's going to be even with the Dremel. So don't think that's really an obstacle, because no matter what you do, you're going to have to use that to finish up your project. Before we get started, make sure there's one thing you remember. My friend Crafsman tells you, and just for those that's not really familiar with the different things you can do with a rotary tool, I figured I would show you a couple examples using this Cobra base backdrop. I have to cut the slots out of this, and while I do it a different way than what I'm about to show, I just wanted to give you an example so that way you would know that you can do this stuff with just a rotary tool. You can use a rotary tool just like you would a drill. You just put a drill bit into it, and then you would turn it on, and then you would be drilled right into it. And what you're wanting to do is you're going to get some of these areas drilled out so you can be able to place larger bits into it, and then you'll cut your slot out. And as you see, whenever you get all your holes drilled into it, you would just simply unscrew the end and pull your bit out, and then select from, I've got some right here on a piece of styrofoam that I had mounted, and you can select some of the different other ones that you would be able to use to cut it out with. I had switched to a sanding bit, so as you can see I finished it off with that. And what I end up doing after I get to this point, I get a file to be able to get into the edges and trim up the rest. I use usually a file like this, and then I'll just come into the edges and to get to rounded corners, I usually will use a file that's rounded, so that way you can be able to get in there and keep the corners without having a problem. A flat file is going to cause the side of the file to dig into a corner, and then you'll end up with an area that you can't use. So you use a rounded file, and then you can keep that corner and then once you get to that point, I usually come in with some sandpaper on the back and just trim out the back end of it a little bit, so that way it'll be smooth, and whenever you use this for the intention of the elevator piece will go across the back without snagging on anything. And plus it'll look good whenever it's done. So as you can see, you can use the rotary tool from Harbor Freight and do just about anything you can with the regular Dremel. I wouldn't want to do like 100 or more of them like this, but you could do it as a weekend project and have it built pretty quickly for just your own usage. As long as you're not doing a bunch of them, you could use a lower priced rotary tool and be able to get one done without any problem. There's many more videos out there that's more in depth than what I'm showing you. I just wanted to show you my particular usage and how I do things. So hopefully that helps you out with the rotary tools, and you can be able to get started and start making stuff. That'll do it for this episode of Trying to Make It. Please like, share, and subscribe, and ring the bell icon so you know whenever I upload a new video. We're continuing the tool series for now, so that way you'll be able to be acquainted with all of the different things of the hobby, so whenever I start getting to full builds and start referring to different things, this way you'll know exactly what I'm talking about, and I won't have to stop in the middle of the build to explain what I mean. We'll see you next week.